So, there has been a lot of talk about the Bradley Beal situation in Washington. So, I thought I'd give my take on it. So the place to start is Beal is 27 years old. His contract runs for this year, next year, and then he has a player option in 2022-23. He's currently averaging 35 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds, and the Wizards are 3-11. And he's also said that he is frustrated publicly. So he hasn't demanded a trade yet, and the Wizards, they haven't said that they're looking to trade him yet, but you feel that a trade might be imminent and it might happen. So I just thought I'd talk about the whole situation. So they still have quite a bit of time with Beal under contract, but not an exuberant amount of time. He's pretty close-ish to leaving just this season, next season, and then player option the season after that. So, it's not like they're rushed to trade him, but, his value is probably at his highest right now. He is also 27, so not a super young player, but still has plenty of time left and, plenty of his prime left. And the Wizards are 3-11, but they have dealt with a lot of injuries so far. Westbrook hasn't been fully healthy. They've had a lot of players miss games due to protocol. Thomas Bryant got injured, so it's not like they're going to be this bad for the rest of the season, and I would bet that they would improve throughout the season and at least be in the race for the playoffs. That being said, they're not going to be competing for a championship anytime soon. I think that's clear. But there's something to be said for being a solid team in the NBA, but we'll just have to see. And so for this reason, I don't think anyone would blame him if he did request a trade, just because, the Wizards, they're not really in a situation to win, and the Westbrook trade hasn't worked out so far. I do think he will bounce back a bit, but it's not a super bright future. Things can always change, but they're not looking like a championship team anytime soon. Another thing is, a lot of people have been saying he should request a trade, but it's almost like they're blaming him for not requesting a trade. And I think that's pretty weird, and different from the situation with other star players. But, he is allowed to stay in Washington, and, they're still going to be a solid team this year. And there's plenty of reasons he would want to stay in Washington. I don't know anything about him personally, but, he's played in Washington his whole career. He might have a family. He might not want to move during this whole situation. So we'll just have to wait and see with that. He might also just be a really loyal guy. The Wizards drafted him, and he might just want to stay with the Wizards, and that's totally fine. No one can really blame him for that. But if he were to request a trade, I'm sure there would be plenty of suitors for him. A player still young, still near his prime-ish, sort of. Still at the beginning of his prime right now, or a few years into it, but he'll still have a few more prime years. So a very desirable trade asset, someone who can get buckets offensively, who has been a good player on a playoff team before. So we'll have to see with that. Will he get traded? That's a tough question. I think maybe, if the Wizards want to rebuild, there's clearly a market for him, but he might also want to stay. And as I said, I think the Wizards will get better. There is some problems with the team, but they do have enough talent for sure to at least make a playoff push. But if he does get traded, or does request a trade, as many are suggesting, I have a few destinations for him. Three main ones for me are the 76ers, the Nuggets, and the Heat. But there's a few other teams. Starting with the Sixers, the big question would be, would Simmons be involved in that trade? It's tough to tell. My inclination is no, they wouldn't include him. And, would the Wizards want him? Well, of course they'd want, a player of Simmons' quality, but maybe they'd rather get young players and draft picks and start a rebuild. Because Simmons isn't that much younger than Beal. I think he's about 3 years younger, so we'll have to see with that. So maybe Simmons, but if not, it would be Thibault, Maxey, contracts, and picks. And that's not a bad return depending on how high you value Tyrese Maxey and Matisse Thibault. The picks would certainly help. I think Washington have almost all of their own picks. They traded a pick to get Westbrook, so that's in 2023. So we'll have to see with that. But I'm sure they'd want picks. The Sixers picks probably wouldn't be too high, but still first round picks, and you never know what can happen in the NBA. So we'd have to see with that. The fit in Philadelphia, I think it'd be great. Beal can be a shot creator for them, something they've desperately needed. I feel like the Sixers are one piece away from really contending for the championship. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, they both wouldn't be included in trade in this hypothetical. They could make up for Beal's weaknesses defensively, and they could still be a strong defensive team while Beal carries the offenses and is a very good offensive player. So that would definitely be a good idea and a good fit. The next team is the Nuggets, and it would be certainly Gary Harris's contract, and then maybe Will Barton. Michael Porter Jr. would probably be the big asset in the trade if the Nuggets are willing to give him up, and then maybe Bol, maybe some picks, maybe some other young players. The Nuggets have plenty of assets, so we'd have to see with that one. But if it did happen, the Wizards would get someone in Michael Porter Jr. I'm assuming he'd be in the trade, that they can build around a young player. Gary Harris, that's not much of an asset. And then maybe some picks. We'd have to see with that one. And then for the Nuggets, offensively the fit would be great with Murray and Jokic and Beal. That'd be an unstoppable offense. But I'm not a massive fan of this trade because they're already a very good offense, Denver, and their weakness is on defense. So I don't know if Beal should be the type of player that they're targeting. So we'd have to see with that one, but I'm not as big a fan of that one as maybe the Sixers and of this next team, the Miami Heat. I think this would probably be the best fit and, the best trade. For the Heat, it would definitely be Tyler Hero, would be the centerpiece of the package, and then some salary and some other players, maybe some other young players, and maybe some picks. We'd have to see, but the big thing would be Tyler Hero going to the Wizards and then Beal going to the Heat. For the Wizards, get a young player in Tyler Hero who's played very well this season and played very well in a few games in the playoffs, so he could be their player to build around in this post-Beal era. And then for the Heat, I just think this would be a great fit. Beal alongside Butler and Bam, and then I'm assuming they'd keep Dragic, but maybe they'd have to include him, and then some other player like a wing, whoever it is. I'm not too sure, but that would be a great starting lineup, and I feel like it makes sense. The Heat have been holding out cap space for 2021, but with Giannis re-signing and a lot of the big free agents re-signing, that class is looking not as exciting as it once did. So it makes sense that they would trade for a third star player. And then they'd have the firepower to match teams like the Sixers and the Nets and the Bucks. Bam and Jimmy could take care of the defense, and then Beal could really help them out offensively. Just imagine adding like a 30-point scorer to the Heat. That would make them a really good team, and the Heat are struggling a bit this season. They have Jimmy Butler has missed a lot of games, and they've had a few injuries and players missing games, but I think Beal would be a great fit with the Heat and could really help them out. And then those are the three trades. There's three teams. There's some other teams like maybe the Pelicans. There's plenty of teams out there for Beal, but I can't really see him going to a rebuilding team like the Knicks or any other rebuilding team, just because he'd be in such a similar situation to the one in Washington. He is 27, so he's not a young player, and his contract runs out in this year, next year, and then player option. So he's not super long term. under a super long-term contract, and he'd just be in the same situation as he's in Washington, carrying a not very good team. So I can't really see him going to a rebuilding team. He might ask out. We'll have to see. If he does, I think the Sixers and the Heat would probably be my two teams for him that would be the best fit for both sides. So that's my take on the Bradley Beal situation. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.